Welcome to Texas 2036's virtual series, Straight Talk Texas, where you have a front row seat to conversations on topics important to our future. My name is Enisha Shropshire, Director of Board and External Affairs here at Texas 2036. As a proud Longhorn, I am thrilled to introduce our guest today, Chancellor of the University of Texas System, J.B. Milliken. Though he has held the role of Chancellor since 2018, he has been on the job when it comes to higher education for more than 30 years. He left a burgeoning law career in the 1980s to work in higher education, public higher education specifically because he understood it as the foremost provider of opportunity in America. That's certainly true in North Carolina, where he served in a variety of important roles with the UNC system. It's true in Nebraska, his home state, where he became the first alumnus of the University of Nebraska to serve as its president. It's just as true in New York City, where he led CUNY, the country's leading urban public university, for several years. And it's true here in Texas. In his role as chancellor, he's charged with leading a system of 8 universities and 6 health science centers with 240,000 students through their most challenging period in memory. This conversation is particularly exciting as it is being led by Texas 2036 President and CEO, Margaret Spellings, who previously served as president of UNC System. These 2 dynamic education leaders will discuss the important role higher education plays during crisis in ensuring the future success of our state. We appreciate your willingness to carve out some time with us to spend with us today. Please welcome Chancellor J.B. Milliken.
Thank you, Anisha. And I hope you have your horns up today as we have this conversation. JB and I have known each other for a long time, so this is a conversation with a friend. In fact, JB, I think we first met when you were at Nebraska, and we traveled together to Latin America after the 9/11 crisis. So you and crisis seem to go together, and I'm glad you're on the field of play here in Texas in the UT system. So you all have just finished in your 14 institutions a very unusual semester of learning. As you reflect on that now, just a few days since the conclusion of it, how do you think you all handled it, and what have you learned in this recent past?
Well, I think that one of the most remarkable things that I've seen in 30 years of higher education is how quickly faculty and students across the country pivoted to online. Not just in Texas. I'm very proud of what our presidents, their teams, our faculty and students did. But this is remarkable, as you well know. There's been resistance for years to this. Most faculty had not taught online in any form. And I'm not saying that we did a fabulous job of it across higher education across the country. We have a lot to learn. But the fact that we were able to finish and keep students persisting and keep those students who are going to graduate this May on track to graduate is pretty remarkable in the history of higher education, I think.
Absolutely. And what will you do? I mean, you're right. We, stepped into the breach and got it done, but we can, I'm sure, improve and do better as you think about the new normal and obviously online be bigger portions of learning, certainly in the near term and beyond likely. There are real advantages ahead. And so what are the things you're going to do here to help faculty do the job better or provide the necessary infrastructure for students? I mean, what needs to be done in the aftermath of this?
Well, I'm not sure we're in the aftermath, but so what needs to be done now in the summer, we're online completely this summer, and I'm sure we'll talk about this, but everybody in the country is focused on the fall in education as well. But there are lots of things that we've learned and that we knew intellectually that we needed to do before, but now with this practical experience that all of our faculty and students have had, and not just in higher ed, but K-12 also, which is maybe even more remarkable. But we've got challenges with, as we know, broadband access in Texas. Not necessarily so much the reach of the utility, but the ability of people to hook up, whether it's low income or in some rural cases. But we've got a significant gap in the people that have it available. And if we're going to have resilient institutions to start with that can make this kind of pivot, and if we're going to do the kinds of things we need to do to expand education to all Texans that are interested in it, then that's the first place to start. We have, as you know better than I do, we may double in population in 30 years.
Right.
And you know very well from your many roles that we are undereducated. The education attainment in Texas is too low. We don't have enough students going on to college now, and we aren't graduating enough to make sure that we are a leader in a knowledge-based economy in the 21st century. So we have had the challenge before us for some time of trying to develop strategies that would provide access and success to this much larger number of Texas students than we're serving now. And it's not going to be by creating a whole bunch of new expensive physical institutions. We double in size in the state. I think I can guarantee you today that the University of Texas system will not have 28 institutions that look like our 14 do today.
Right.
And online education, the ability to work closely with K-12 and community colleges and share courses and have people progress in a lifelong education. This is the predicted change, disruptive event in higher education, I think, that has been either promised or threatened, depending on your perspective, for a long time. And now it's smacked us in the face. And we have been forced to deal with it, but there's opportunity here. And I think there's a real opportunity for Texas in particular.
Absolutely. And thank you for being on the front end of that. Talk about the fall and students going back to our schools and colleges and universities, and what you all are thinking about in terms of safety of not only the students, but your faculty and staff.
So I participate every day, many times, with our presidents, with presidents across the country and others, health experts, to talk about what can and should we be doing in the fall. And I think that most institutions, despite the headlines about, we're definitely going to open or we're not going to open, most are in the same place. I mean, everybody realizes that this fall isn't going to look like last fall. But what we all hope is that it won't look like this spring either, that it'll be somewhere in between. It'll be, we won't have the same kinds of very large lecture halls, so maybe that's a good thing. We will have a combination of online. Laboratories will be open. We'll be doing social distancing. When we start will be an important question. We'll take all the advice from health experts. We'll work obviously closely with the governor and his team, the Strike Force to Reopen Texas, and the Higher Education Coordinating Board. So we're looking right now at, does it make sense to start earlier? Does it make sense to start earlier? A couple of large institutions around the country have announced that now. Start earlier, finish earlier, so that if there is some resurgence of COVID in the winter, that maybe we start in the middle of August and we end after a Thanksgiving break, or finish online. Right now, no decisions have been made on this, except for us to say that we plan to have our campuses open. We know that it will look different than it did last year. And we're going to do everything we can and follow the health advice and the science to keep people as safe as possible, to ensure that not only our students, as you suggest, our faculty and staff, some of whom are as old as me, need to also be assured that they have a safe environment to work in. And so there'll be a lot of changes.
And you talked about, the promise of technology and whatnot. The other thing that, is how we use time. I mean, we have been thinking of, people like to go to school between 10 in the morning and 2 in the afternoon, 4 days a week, never on Friday. Well, we're blowing up all of those, traditions as well. And I think that's a good thing, because people will be able to learn when and where they need to. One of the things I think that people don't necessarily know or appreciate about a system like the University of Texas system is the incredible juggernaut it is in terms of public health, our health workforce, our public health expertise. Talk about that dimension of UT and what it's bringing to this crisis.
Well, there's a story released today that UTMB, Galveston National Labs, Stanford, and the Army Medical Research have just had positive results with an antibody therapeutic for COVID. Now, it's still early on, but that's a really exciting, promising prospect. So we've got 350 research activities going on right now across the university system, maybe 40 or so on vaccines, 140 or so dealing with therapeutics, and a lot on technology, building respirators, building shields, doing other kinds of things in the engineering programs in addition to the health programs to try to respond to this. So we've done thousands and thousands of tests, I think 75,000 tests now. We've treated over 100 COVID patients at our institutions. And so we're a huge part of the infrastructure in the state that's addressing this.
You know, we'll change channels a bit because it seems like all we talk about is COVID, but let's talk about education and the future of education and how you mentioned a minute ago. And we're going to grow another 10 million people in the next 16 years into our bicentennial in 2036. We are going to be simultaneously older and younger and urban and diverse. And so it is a changing hand that we have to play, and a great asset, obviously. People are still coming to Texas to seek opportunity. How should we think about affordable, aligned, relevant, high-wage pathways and a retooling of American higher education in this moment?
So you start with some great advantages in Texas. You know, I wouldn't want to be any other place at this moment because, as you say, we're going to grow enormously, and we're the second youngest state in the country. So it's, as you know, it's a lot easier to educate and keep younger people on a pathway to continuing to a degree than it is older people. So it's a great opportunity for us. We've got a great natural resource. But that doesn't mean we can give up on the older people. I mean, what we know now about, and I hate using the word older people, it's, you know, you and me. That's,
yeah, exactly.
What we know now
Vibrant.
is the kinds of jobs that are being created. It isn't going to be very long before we say 100% of all new jobs require education beyond high school as we think of it today. Absolutely. That doesn't mean a 4-year education. It doesn't even necessarily mean a 2-year education, but it could be certificates. It could be some kinds of reskilling programs. You know, I saw a poll the other day that said 30% of millennials think that they will need to go back to school now to get a job in this new post-COVID economy. That's an enormous array of the population that we're going to have to address in ways that we haven't done it effectively before. And that's before you even start talking about formal education and the sort of birth to, to career education, that we've got to do a better job of getting people early on to make sure the playing field is leveled. You know, one of the things that we know, which is an unfortunate reality, that educational achievement, those people who do the best, who have the best opportunity to go to college, get a great career, is most highly correlated with wealth. And so the way that we address that is early on, I think, providing the same kinds of educational opportunities to people across the board. So we got to do a better job in Texas of that, and everybody that I talk to agrees with that and realizes it. And then we've got to do a better job, I think, if we're going to keep costs down and keep people on track of getting more college into high school. And you know, there are several different ways that you can do that we've done over the years, but we got to get better at it. There are all kinds of reasons, you know, just success in college. We know that if you've taken even one college course in high school, you're more likely to enroll and graduate in college. But also it drives the cost down, and you have a much better chance of graduating in a timely way. So, you know, those are all sort of things that we all know, I think, today. Yeah. And it's a question of getting the will and getting the right people together to make sure they happen.
Talk about how to better engage with the employer community than we have. I mean, we've all had lots of good intentions and a lot of, you know, often one-off programs or company-related, you know, investments and whatnot. But how do we do that in a more fulsome, you know, platform where employers and potential employees plug together?
Yeah. So there are a lot of really interesting, I won't call them boutique programs, but the programs, one that was started in New York, P-TECH at
Yes.
Albany, and now has expanded in Texas as well,
Yes.
where we combine a community college and a high school or a college and a community college and an employer, so that they are working together early on the curriculum, on the needs of the employer. They're first in line for jobs and internships as they go through their experience. Those kinds of things, it may not look exactly like that, but the more that we do that kind of arrangement where we're talking to professors. I was in a classroom the other day with Michael Dell. He was actually the star of the classroom. I was just sitting in. But we talked a little bit about what they look for at Dell in terms of people coming out of college, and then what happens to them once they're there, and what kind of skills they're looking for. That kind of thing needs to be happening all the time in a very sort of systematic way, so that we're understanding that. And there are some great partnerships around the country. AT&T and Georgia Tech have one, and there are others that I think are really promising. But it's clear that we not only need a better connection between high school, community college, and senior colleges, senior education, but we also need a better connection at the career end of that. Really, it's the career launching of that. Right. And part of the challenge is, we have undervalued as a country, I think, and as an institution, the institution of higher education, the sort of career offices and placement and the whole infrastructure that is designed to help students find their path, their kind
of JOB. Yeah.
Yes, there you go. And I mean, but it's hugely important. Right. And I haven't seen a poll on this in a few years, but it used to be that it was 70% of parents in America thought the reason that their child should go to college is to get a better job. I'll bet if anything, it's higher than that now.
Sure, exactly.
And that came as kind of a revelation to some people, but you have to respond to what the demand is, and absolutely. That's a positive thing.
Amen. And, for our last question, I want to ask you about, you're hearing a lot of families and students contemplate, gap years or stopping out, or how to think about higher education. Obviously, this is a really tough job market to be entering into. I think students, in fact, there was a thing I think in the New York Times yesterday about, just the anxiety that this generation has. What advice do you have as a higher ed leader about how to think about learning and perseverance in these challenging days?
Who has a daughter leaving college?
Yeah, exactly. Personally.
So, I'm a little concerned about the kind of knee-jerk reaction that, boy, this is a great year for a gap year.
Yeah, me too.
Because what we know from the data is that there are so many students that if they step out or don't start, they aren't going to get back on that path in education. And while a gap year may be a great experience for some, I think it's really important that we stay focused. I mean, the issue about fall is not, are we protecting health or are we looking out for our budget? That's not the right question.
Exactly.
The question is, what about these students that we're serving? What's the right thing for them? And I think for probably most of the people that we're talking about, the best thing is to try to keep them on a path so they don't get off of it and keep them persisting.
I like to say it's never a bad time to invest in your future, and that no one can take education away from you. And so we ought to be leaning in.
You and Warren Buffett both say that. He must have gotten it from you.
I'm sure he did. I've never heard him say that, but your fellow Nebraskan. JB, thank you for being with us. I know you have an interesting hand to play. We're all learning so much. That's a fascinating thing, and to be in this enterprise that affects so many people in the future of our state. So thank you for your service. And with that, Enisha, I will turn it back to you to wrap it up and to keep your horns up.
Thank you all for watching Straight Talk Texas. If you have questions and feedback, we want to hear from you. Email us at straighttalk@texas2036.org and follow us on social media and sign up to receive our emails. Visit texas2036.org for more information. Until next time, wishing you and your family well. Hook 'em horns.